coming to get you, Barbara.
I ain't one to make a fuss about a thing like that.
Make your wishes.
They're coming for you.
Welcome everybody back to Deep Cuts of Horror, where we take a look at the underappreciated and sometimes overlooked films in the annals of horror cinema, and we decide once and for all if we think it's deep or if it needs to be cut. I am here again with Jacob. How's it going, Jacob?
It's going well.
Awesome. Now today, well, first of all, let me just say, right now it is around June time, and they say that everybody starts celebrating Christmas earlier and earlier. And here at Deep Cuts of Horror, we're no different. Here we are, we're going to celebrate Christmas this year in June with Anna and the Apocalypse. So, Jacob, I have one question for you.
What is that question?
If you could mesh any 6 genres of film together, what would be your personal preference?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. Okay, let me see if I can figure it out. 6? That's a lot.
That's about how many I got
I-
from this movie,
I
and this
think-
was just this director or writer's personal preference.
I think teen coming of age, comedy, musical with a little bit of like horror. I think 4. I could easily mix those 4, but I'm drawing a blank on the other 2. Would you like to fill me in on my personal preference?
Okay, well we can. We can also do Western and Space Odyssey.
Western and Space Odyssey.
Yes.
How the hell?
So it's basically The Mandalorian, by way of not another teen movie, by way of High School Musical.
Okay.
This is basically writing itself.
Okay.
No, I'm asking you what your personal preference for
Okay.
6
So
genres you want to
you
see
actually
together are.
want me to answer that question and not go on a rant about the 7 different genres that are in this movie?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna have to think about this for a sec. I think I would definitely want it to be. Do you consider satire a genre or just sort of like a type of film?
I'll consider it a genre, given the
Okay.
other 5.
I'd like a satire. I would like it to have horror elements, but I mean sort of like a psychological horror, not like gore. Mystery. I would like the Western style, probably like a neo-Western, like No Country for Old Men. And fantasy. You probably have to make it modern fantasy to fit with everything else, but like I'd like to have some magic and stuff thrown in there. And one more. What's the last one? Screw it, let's just make it a comedy. Why not?
Well, for a minute there, we were on the money, and I had a movie already picked out that resembled that. Well, not a movie, but it's a thing on Netflix that I was watching called The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window.
Oh, that's a title and a half right there. What is that about?
Basically, it's every psychological thriller based around a white woman who lives in a really nice suburb, and something's going on next door.
So like
And everyone around her is gaslighting her about what's happening, but she knows what's going on, so it's up to her to solve the murder or whatever's going on.
so she's like
It's
Shia
pretty-
LaBeouf in Disturbia.
Yes, it's pretty funny.
By the way, totally irrelevant, but do you just think of Shia LaBeouf as Shia LaBeouf, like in every single movie that he plays? Like he's not playing a different character. It's just him.
Lately, seeing him, he's just kind of, I don't know, he's kind of like that family-run business you see in a small town. You remember when it first opened when you were a little kid, and it was all new, and now it's just, they haven't done anything since, and so the sign's faded, there's graffiti all over it, the windows are foggy, and the seats are all torn, but it's still somehow in operation.
Well, you know, you'll think about celebrities and usually some kind of iconic moment in their career, right? Like you think about Miley Cyrus, and you're like, oh, remember when she twerked and the country exploded? When I think of Shia LaBeouf, I think about that time that he was on house arrest and he figured out his neighbor was a murderer, and I'm like, oh, wait, no, that didn't actually happen.
See, I just think about Holes.
Yeah, of course.
What a great movie.
It's been a long time since I've seen that.
I need to rewatch it. I read the book a minute ago. It was good. So, today we're here to discuss Anna and the Apocalypse. And when I found this movie, I didn't know it was a musical.
Neither did I. That was a wonderful surprise. Uh, I thought I was having some kind of trip or something.
And for a minute, I had to check because I wanted to make sure I was watching the right movie. And I didn't text you, Jacob, but I thought, you know what, fuck it. This is just going to be funnier if we both end up accidentally watching the wrong movie.
Yeah, okay, so this movie came out in 2018, right?
2017.
2017? Okay. Well, I'm gonna guess that they didn't remake it a year later. So I think we watched the same movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was released in the United States in 2018. It was released across the pond in the UK in 2017.
Okay, that makes
a year
sense.
later. Wow.
So we did both watch the same movie.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is why? Why did we watch this movie?
Well, we're here at Deep Cuts of Horror, and the movie's box office gross was just about $600,000.
Wow. What how much went into making it?
I can't find numbers for the the budget.
I mean, I'm not crazy, right? That's an insanely low box office gross.
Yeah, it is, especially for something that was released overseas.
To be honest,
I remember
why.
it had a limited theatrical release, but not. But indie movies are reportedly pretty bad for sharing their box office their budget numbers because it comes from odds and ends places.
Frankly, this movie could have probably been done on a very low budget. I mean, it looks nice, like it's good quality filming, but at the end of the day, they're in like 2 rooms for the entire time, and there's like 15 characters maybe. So.
Yeah, I'd say most of the budget went to the sound mixing and the studio time it took to record the music.
So I could see them getting away from it really cheaply, but man, 600,000 is so low.
I know. But again, I can see this is very niche because you're going to alienate a lot of people when you start making movies like this. You're making a horror movie, which is very divisive. You're making a zombie movie, which subsets some people out. You're making a musical, which takes out a good chunk of both camps, the people that like musicals and the people that like horror movies that don't like the other.
See, to be honest, I think that you're probably alienating anybody with expectations. Mm-hmm. If you went into this movie with any expectations at all, you were probably disappointed or at least confused. And luckily, I don't go into these movies with any expectations. I just sit down and I think, okay, what is this? And boy, that was an interesting answer that I got.
I know, and I knew it was a comedy, so I thought maybe that they were just doing one song at the beginning. But then the song was just a little too serious. It wasn't goofy. So then the next song started, and I just decided, okay, I'm going to strap in, and I hope Jacob is still watching.
I love musicals. I tend to like when the music has a purpose. Like, I feel like music, like numbers in a musical should be like action scenes in a regular movie. You use them sparingly and when it's really important, and you make them memorable. And I feel like a lot of musicals don't do that. They just sing because it's a musical. And that tends to get on my nerves. And I think that that's what they did here. I didn't like most of the songs. My favorites belonged to, I guess, the antagonist and the anti-hero, Savage and Nick, respectively. I think they had the best ones. The rest of them, I think, were pretty iffy.
Yeah, they were angsty. I'll give them that. They did some cool rhyming things, but there was a lot of bridge in there. Lots of bridge. But due to this movie got a pretty good critic response as well. It has a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, if you trust that. But it didn't do terrible. I just don't know why it didn't do better in terms of its box office. I know it had a limited theatrical run, but I think it also went directly to video shortly after.
How would you advertise this movie?
How would you advertise this movie?
Like, you know, a lot of movies have obvious trailer scenes where you can look at it. We talked about this in Wishmaster, where there's a scene where you look at it and you say, this was obviously included in the movie just so they could put it in the trailer. I can't
Well,
think
their
of any.
tagline kind of said it for them. Shaun of the Dead meets La La Land. That's about as close as you're going to get to something that's going to make people go, oh, it's a zombie comedy and it's a musical.
So, I kind of expected to be saying this a little deeper into the episode, but I guess I'm just going to get, since we're talking about all the genres right now, I'll go ahead and engage your opinion on it. I kind of feel like none of the genres in this movie worked. Like, I didn't think it was funny enough to be a comedy. It wasn't really scary enough to be a horror movie. I wasn't a fan of the musical numbers. So it was kind of like you took like one of each Skittle and you just threw it in a bowl and you just left me hungry.
I will agree with you on that. The comedy elements in here weren't enough to necessarily work, but with the subject matter of the story being a musical and also trying to be a bit more light, it just has to be a comedy. Otherwise, you're going to end up throwing another genre in there. And to be fair, at points it did try, but it seemed like we were catching a bunch of trains in this movie, right? It wasn't trying to be all these things at one time. It was, you'd have a good 5-minute chunk where we're a comedy, a 5-minute chunk where we're a musical, 5-minute chunk where we're a serious drama, and there's no real overlap.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Like, when we're watching the musicals, like when they're singing about all their teen angst and how they don't know what the future is going to hold, it reads just like a coming-of-age musical, right? Mm-hmm. It's not really... There are a few comedy elements, like when you see zombies ambling about in the background and cars hitting light poles, but for some reason it just doesn't hit you like that would in a different movie. For the most part, it's just like a coming-of-age musical. And then you'll cut to another scene, and it's like actually kind of scary, intense, and emotional.
Mm-hmm.
It was
and
like...
this movie has about 5 I Want songs in it.
5?
And I like a good I Want song, yes. Breakaway is an I Want song. Hollywood Ending is an I Want song. Human Voice is an I Want song.
Sorry, what about Savage's song? Would you consider that to be an I Want song?
Nothing's Gonna Stop Me Now.
Nothing's gonna stop me now. The human population is terrible, and now it's being decimated, and I get what I want.
Yeah, I consider that an I Want song. We get an I Want song for everybody, and everybody probably gets multiple I Want songs.
Okay.
But I will say this, which isn't hard to do. This movie does have some earwigs, and there are points of songs that I've been singing, namely the fish rap.
Fish rap. Okay, I'm not sure exactly which one you're referring to. I kind of spaced out during some of the musicals. Okay.
The penguins, were they fish mother flippers?
Okay.
That song is cancer.
What was your opinion on the like the canon musical part? Like during the stage show, the Christmas like porno?
I mean, it was your typical small town school Christmas pageant.
Yeah, there was nothing weird about that at all. I was kind of surprised that they didn't do something a little bit more daring.
Or put it into the plot a little bit more.
Okay.
Are we to believe this movie takes place on Christmas or the day after Christmas?
Oh, that's the hard-hitting question right there. I don't know. But is this a cultural thing? Like, would that have been an acceptable thing to do at a high school in the UK? Like, that was straight up pornographic.
Oh, the song.
Yes.
The juiced up Santa Baby song.
Yes, like my chimney needs unclogging. Right, I've warmed up my milk for you.
Okay,
unload your sack.
That song has actually made it to my Christmas playlist, believe it or not.
Okay.
And it's just in there, in the bowels of it. And I can't wait for Christmas to come around when we're having dinner. And it's that time of year comes on.
Please send me an anti-invitation to your Christmas party. Like, just inform me that it is occurring so that I can make sure to stay away. I need to start doing that, by the way. I need to start sending notices to people who are specifically not invited to things that I do.
Send it like a landlord.
Yeah, at this point,
Just
the list is
tape
going to
it
be
to
longer
their
than
door.
the guest list.
Send it to, yes. For these reasons, I will not be attending. In some bright yellow or bright red piece of paper. All right. So, do you have any other musings before we get into this?
We're not into this?
Well, we were going to go into the plot.
Oh, no. Wait, let's go into the plot.
The quote-unquote plot.
Oh, yeah. Really big, bold quotes. I don't think this movie has a plot.
No, not really. Okay, so this movie takes place in Scotland, and we meet our main character, Anna, who is at a finishing school with her best guy friend. We kind of get this little hint that there's a little bit more going on there. And Anna's whole character is basically that of every Disney princess. She wants more, and she wants to get away and see the world. And so she's going to put off going to college for a year, but that's not something her dad is particularly fond of, because he wants better for her because he is the janitor at the school, and for some reason that's a bad thing. Pause for a second, because I hate movies where they make jobs like janitor seem like a bad thing, just for the lazy purpose of saying, oh, your dad's janitor.
Okay, so why do you hate that?
Well, because it's not like a bad career to have. It's a respectable job, and it does pay decently depending on where you are.
Because if I thought that was like completely unfounded or uninteresting as a plot point, I would agree with you. But I feel like there probably is a stigma against that, right? Like, oh, your dad's a janitor.
There is a stigma. It's kind of like when you go to school and they say you better go to college or else you'll become a trash collector.
Yeah, which is a really shitty thing to say, by the way.
It's a really shitty job to have, one, because you're stigmatizing people who have a valid job and a service that we all require. Mm-hmm. And two, the trash collector makes more money than I do because he works for the county and he has a lot better benefits than I do.
Which, I think I would agree with you if I felt it were being overplayed. Like, if people would just walk around being like, ha, your dad's a janitor, you pauper bitch. But I didn't really feel that way, and I think that's probably a genuine angst that a lot of people have, right? Like, oh, I don't want to end up, just a school teacher in some shitty town, or a janitor, or a fry cook at McDonald's. I want to actually kind of do better than whatever my parents did. And yeah, I mean, janitor is an incredibly important job, and there's no shame in it, but it's probably not at the top of your bucket list. So, I don't know, is it just your complaint that you think it's a shitty thing for people to make fun of, or do you think it's overplayed as a trope? Like, what's the crux of your...
As a trope, as a whole, it does get overplayed a lot. Maybe I wouldn't feel so bad if we modernized it a bit. I just feel like we've used the my parent is a janitor, everyone makes fun of me trope a little too often. I think we can broaden that. Mm-hmm. Now, honestly, I know we saw it it was the crux of the book, Stephen King's It was a crux in the TV show. Well, the miniseries Stephen King's It wasn't so much an issue in the 2018 adaptation of it, but that presence was still there. I just think there are other jobs out there that you can make that a point to without stigmatizing the janitorial profession.
And I mean, you're right. We're kind of looking at, 40 years at least now, based on what you just said, like Stephen King's It miniseries, that was in the 80s. And, we're in the 2022. So, yeah, 40 years worth of a trope is probably a bit much. I'm curious, though, because I personally don't feel like I see it very often nowadays. Do you still see it frequently?
I mean, we've kind of gotten around lately. Well, no. No, there is still that stigma, because there was a whole thing. I know it's probably dating itself and it's been a couple years, but I just did a rewatch of Malcolm in the Middle. Okay. And the big thing at the end was they didn't have enough money to send Malcolm to Harvard. And he gets to go to Harvard, but he is the janitor assistant while he also takes classes. And that's kind of the stinger of the series finale. Spoiler alert, go watch 8 seasons of Malcolm in the Middle. You'll still love it. But that's kind of the stinger at the end, because the whole crux of the show is the theme song, Life is Unfair.
The reason that I ask, and this is possibly way too lawn chair philosopher here, but
We're a podcast. Most people are either in a lawn chair or in their car.
I don't feel like I see as much small town classism as I would have expected to see, like maybe 10 years or 20 years ago. And I'm wondering if A, that's valid or not, or like, does it still exist and I'm not seeing it? And B, if there is less of it, is that just because we're all poor now?
Small town classism is something that I've never seen done properly in a TV show or movie. Because small town classism isn't like other classisms. Real small town classism isn't daddy owns a used car lot, I am the richest girl in town, everybody fears me. Mm-hmm. Small town classism is my daddy is the janitor at the nursing home, but my family has been really popular for the last 70 years. My dad was hot shit in high school. Everybody fears me because of my extended family. And that's just kind of where I am on that. They don't really play that in movies so much. You often get the trope of them clearly being medium-sized fish in a very small pond with the, again, my daddy owns a used car lot. We have the most money in town. And it's just not really playing with the small town economic mindset so much as just taking the big one and just smushing it down.
Which I think we're probably talking about slightly different things in terms of like the small town classism. But, you know, I look around now and I see maybe a professor at a university. Mm-hmm. I see a guy who owns like a small business. I see maybe a clerk at a grocery store or a clothing store. And I think, none of you seem to have significantly better lives than any of the other ones. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like you'd expect, like, oh, you know, the professor, he's loaded. He has a nice house, and he's got a family, and a great car, and everything. It's like, no, the inside of his car looks like the inside of my closet, and and his office is smaller than my closet. It's like, damn, you probably should have just worked at the grocery store.
As an adult, I found out we all just have varying mental illnesses.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm not even sure they're varied. I think probably a lot more similar in that regard than we might realize.
So it's these kinds of angst and frustrations that would lead characters like Anna to want to break away.
Wait, who's Anna?
The main person that we're talking about.
We're reviewing a movie, aren't we?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, Anna and the Apocalypse.
I forgot we were reviewing a movie. I thought this was like my my intro to philosophy class.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Anna from Anna the Apocalypse.
Yes, Anna and the Apocalypse. She gets this feeling of wanting to break away, which leads them to sing. And I do have a soft spot in musicals for one character singing a song and that sentiment echoing through a bunch of other characters. And that's also how we get to see the supporting cast in the film, including, her best friend John, who's secretly in love with her, Chris, who is this kind of dumb videographer. This girl, Steph, who's a transfer from America. Her parents are in Mexico and her girlfriend is somewhere else. Who also pause here because seeing Steph reminded me of something. Anyone out here who has known about or is currently a Star Kid fan will know what I'm talking about immediately. She's wearing a green tie, and she just reminded me of Lauren Lopez playing Draco Malfoy in a Harry Potter musical. This whole time, and there's a scene where she's crawling around on the floor, and I think, oh my god, this checks out 100%.
I'm going to pig farts.
It's on Mars.
The headmaster Rumbleroar is a lion, and he's not clinically insane like this fuck from Game of Thrones.
Let's go watch Wizards of Waverly Place. Moon shoes Potter, Star Kids Potter.
Oh, I love a very Potter musical, but I've got to say Twisted is my favorite, I think.
Twisted is in my opinion the best Star Kid musical.
It
I recently did a rewatch of several of them, and even the newer ones. And while I like some of the newer ones, especially the guy who didn't like musicals, Twisted is something that I can genuinely enjoy.
Yeah, Twisted is unironically like just really good. Like it's a good
Yes.
story in and of itself. Like yes, it's a satire of Disney and Aladdin and what that, but it is itself a good piece of art.
Yes, the others you have to suspend some disbeliefs to get through them and understand they're of a certain time, and that it's very much that college niche humor with a bunch of in jokes that you're just kind of there for and seeing these people act out. But Twisted is a genuinely good damn thing.
The question then is whether it is nobler in the mind to be well liked but ineffectual or moral but maligned. Whoever wrote that line, give that man an award, right? And
Wasn't
then
it Shakespeare?
is that actually Shakespeare? I know it's playing off of Shakespeare, but is that the line verbatim?
No, it's whether 'tis
It's
nobler to
yeah.
live.
Suffer the slings and arrows of fate. Yeah,
Okay.
it's from it's Hamlet, right?
Yeah, we totally went to English class freshman year of high school.
Yeah. Well, oh God, no. I'm gonna go on a big tangent if I bring up the Great Gatsby. But yeah, and then Twisted immediately goes straight into like, I will never be the hero all the citizens adore, but if I hide to save my life, what has my life been for? Like that's legit. That's not just a stupid comedy.
So good. So good, but I really every time Steph would do anything, I just think of that, especially the green tie and everything. She needs to play Lauren Lopez as Draco Malfoy in a Harry Potter musical movie. Netflix, make it happen. And Steph is trying to do this social justice report about homelessness, but it keeps getting roadblocked by the vice principal, Mr. Savage, who plays a very important part in this story later. Anna also has difficulty with past flame of hers, Nick.
Yeah, that kind of confused me a bit for like the first half of the movie because I just missed something, but I couldn't tell for sure whether they had
think they
actually
were
had a
just
past
exes.
romance. Yeah, they are just exes. That was made very clear later. But at first, it kind of gave me the impression like they were maybe interested in each other actively, but he was also a massive dick or something like that.
I know. Well, we find out later in the story they had sex, but something happened and he just kind of broke things off.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that's kind of the first song is basically everybody's "I Want" song. We find out that John wants to be in a relationship with Anna because he likes her. Chris really isn't in this scene that much. He has a part, but we really don't get to him till we get to our next song, which comes way too close. Hollywood Ending, where he is singing with his girlfriend about how they're perfect for each other and they want everything to work out. Again, this movie, it's like 8 things all at once, and I don't want to say it doesn't succeed in some of them, but it doesn't mesh them perfectly.
Yeah. It's not 8 things all at once. It's 8 things one at a time.
One at a time.
One at
But
a
in
time.
in no particular order.
Yeah.
So basically, what happens at the end of the day is Anna and her friend John are going to work at the bowling alley. At the same time, a bunch of people in town are at the school pageant. This includes Chris's girlfriend, Lisa, who is performing a very, very raunchy song. We already mentioned it before, but it's basically the juiced up Santa baby, making a bunch of innuendos. And I gotta say, I love a good clean sounding song that is just full of innuendos. Making Whoopi is one of my favorite little tunes.
This was not a clean sounding song, dude. This was like one of the most overtly sexual Christmas songs I have ever heard. And performed
Oh, yeah.
by high schoolers.
But if this song were coming on in, say, Walmart at Christmas time, you probably get about halfway through it before you realized what it was.
My chimney needs unclogging.
Yes, but it just sounds like a little jolly little Christmas song.
No, 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 it does not. And yeah, maybe if you just listened to it, you could get some passive, ignorant bliss going on there. But definitely not watching it. There's like 6 male strippers as backup dancers. Or like 12 maybe? Like they're supposed
And
to be the
Mr.
reindeer.
Savage is upset about this, like he didn't sign off on it.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, from the world of high school performing, you know about things in advance. Especially something this elaborate, because teenagers are stupid and can't keep their mouth shut about these things.
Yeah, he did obviously sign off on it, which is silly, but I have to say that might be the only time in the movie where I was fully on Savage's side. Like I was sitting there watching this and watching his like mental state crumble as he is forced to experience this song, and I'm sitting there like, yeah, this is really weird. Does everybody else think it's normal? And I love that the main singer's grandmother, like this old sweet lady with a heart condition, is out there in the audience just loving every minute of it.
Again, because it just supposed to sound like a little wholesome Christmas tune.
Okay.
Oh well. So maybe we should talk about Mr. Savage's character a little bit. What were your thoughts on him? Because to me, I get comic relief Alan Moore / Polka Trainer.
Okay, so we're gonna have to fight on that then, because you know that I love Alan Moore, and
I do too, but he looks like comic relief Alan Moore.
okay, no, so Mr. Savage is played by, I may be pronouncing it incorrectly, but it's like Paul Kay or something like that, and he is the actor for Thoros of Myr in Game of Thrones. And he has this very distinct voice and this distinct way of talking, and so that's the only person that I was able to see for this entire film. I was like, oh yeah, that's Headmaster Thoros over there, and I don't know, you've not watched Game of Thrones or read A Song of Ice and Fire, have you?
I read the first chapter and watched the first 3 episodes.
Okay, yeah, so you wouldn't see him. Basically, he's a priest of R'hllor. It's like this underclass religion that they worship a god called the Red God. But he doesn't believe any of it. He just uses his position as a missionary to get drunk and fight in tournaments and stuff. Until he accidentally brings his dead friend back to life. And he's like, "Oh shit, maybe my religion is real." And so that's the guy that I was seeing this entire movie, which disappoints me greatly because I think the character of Mr. Savage is pretty terrible. Like, I don't understand his motivations. He seems to be a massive prick for no reason whatsoever, and he just doesn't do anything. He just like
he has some sort of little man power complex.
yeah. But we don't see what happened to him in his life to bring him to that state. He sings about having that complex, but we can't relate to him because we don't know what happened.
He is an administrator of a children's school. You don't really need more explanation of that, of having a power complex.
Yeah, but you have to explain how they got there. Which, yeah, how did this guy get there? He's like, he hates children, and like, it goes beyond a passive comical hate of children. He seems actively kind of homicidal toward them.
I think he's just climbing the ladder because this is like a prep school, right? This is a prep school, so he is teaching at the top of the capability in his field in terms of primary school education and being an administrator. So I think he likes the power. He just doesn't like the subjects, much like we see later. He enjoys the power, but doesn't like the people he's ruling.
Stop going into education if you hate kids.
Yeah, don't do it. There are better ways to enforce your power trip, like the DMV.
It's like
All the different colored lines you can make people stand in.
Man, I really hate cooking. I'm gonna go try to become a chef. Like if you start out starry-eyed and hopeful that you're gonna go in and change people's lives and make a
And get
difference
jaded?
and get jaded, that's fine, right?
That's
That
what we all do.
that's what we all do. But if you already hate kids, don't be a teacher.
It's only getting worse.
But yeah, so that's my take on the character basically. I didn't like him. He was mildly entertaining on screen because he had this kind of like Joker insanity vibe. But yeah, he didn't really serve any purpose. He was just like a pointless antagonist. And
Oh no, now I know exactly what he looked like to me. Okay, no, he looked like the old man in the Coraline book.
in the book,
In the book, the illustration they had for him.
I need to look that up real quick because I love Coraline, but I don't recall this image. Oh, I know, I found it. You're right. That does look like him.
Yes, and he brings the same energy to it too. Actually, Mr. Savage just seems like he's in a cartoon this whole time. That's the acting performance we're getting. So, essentially, we have it set up, and I will say this for the movie, it's kind of clever. They did it this way. We have these three groups of people that are split up because Anna and John are working at the bowling alley. A bunch of people are at the concert that's going on at the school, and Steph and what's his name, Chris? They are at the homeless shelter filming some stuff for a secret project that Steph is wanting to do to show Mr. Savage. And during the shift, Anna and John accidentally hit an old lady with a shoe and knock her over, and then they just leave. And it cuts to the next day, and we have this really upbeat, singy-songy song about having a great day. But this is probably the peak of this movie's comedy for me, because they're singing this really happy, singy-songy song about having a great day. But while they have their headbuds in, you see basically an escalation of destruction. You see a little cloud of smoke in the background, and then you start seeing zombies and stuff walking behind them and pulling people out of their homes and cars crashing, all while she's just singing this song and being oblivious to everything. Sort of like cartoons when they're just walking and talking, and then they walk into a construction site, and then they get on a beam that's being loaded by a crane, but safely emerge on the other side. That sort of thing. That's exactly what we get here. Now, does it work in live action? You be the judge, Jacob.
So, in terms of comedic value, I didn't really find this to be very funny because the principle is just so overdone. Right? We've seen this kind of thing a million times, and they didn't really add anything with this number. But I do want to commend them on the wordplay. There are a huge number of puns and really nice juxtapositions in the song that they're singing, and they don't wink at you when they do it. If you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. But like, you know, they say things like "I'm waking up," "I've spent too long playing dead." When like there's chaos in the streets behind them, they'll say like "I'm miles away" or "I feel miles away," and it's like, yeah, because mentally you are miles away. It's just this. It's really funny because everybody's dying here is one other thing they say. I think. I think that the writing is really good. The writing on this song is really good, and it plays very well with the background. I just think the end product that we got was just kind of silly, right? Like I've seen, like you said, with the construction and the cartoons, I've seen this thing a million times.
Something I kind of wanted to bring up with you. Does the music in this movie not feel like it's someone's jukebox musical?
I'm not entirely sure what that means. Could you elaborate?
Okay, a jukebox musical is a musical that uses previously existed songs to create a work. Think Mamma Mia, where the musical is all ABBA. Think Moulin Rouge, where you have David Bowie, all that, and they make it into an original story. I think this is just someone's jukebox musical. They wrote a bunch of songs, and they just had them laying around, and then they wrote a movie, and then they incorporated their songs into the movie.
Well, so how would you explain what I just brought up then about how the writing of that one particular song is woven so intricately with the background, right? That can't be a coincidence.
Yeah, but I'm saying if the songs existed first, you can easily write a scene around a song. Moulin Rouge did it for a whole movie, writing 80s rock pop around a story.
I don't. It doesn't feel like a jukebox musical to me. It
I don't know, the
feels like
songs just don't really seem too terribly connected, and the story just sort of seems to mold itself around the songs instead of the songs around the story.
so I agree they don't feel connected. I don't feel that the story molds itself around the songs. Again, I don't think there's that much of a story to begin with. To me, the songs just kind of feel like interruptions.
I was gonna say, the songs seem more like set pieces. Like, where everything we're doing is to get to this next song. It doesn't seem like these characters are on a journey to get to anywhere except the next song. Wherever they go, we're gonna get a song. We know that. But we get this nice little homage, I guess, to Night of the Living Dead, where Anna and John find each other in a playground / cemetery.
It was a cemetery with a teeter-totter in the middle of it, wasn't it? Am I crazy?
Well, because you have it's symbolism, see, because you have life and you have death together.
I'm just now realizing that they didn't run away from the cemetery and then wind up in a playground, did they? Or was that thing literally in the middle of a cemetery?
Oh no, wait, no, they found it in the cemetery and then they ran to a playground that was adjacent.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was like, there's no way there was a seesaw
Not really, but
in the middle of
okay.
the graveyard.
Let's build a playground right next to a cemetery. That's
Maybe.
not gonna kill.
No, you got it backwards, man. It used to just be a playground, but it was really unsafe.
I was gonna make a joke about Reagan era safety regulations, but this is Scotland.
It was a city park. It was called Savage Garden. Mr. Savage, he likes to hang around there.
Awful. But it's sort of a play on Night of the Living Dead, where you have the opening scene or the inciting incident with zombies happening in a cemetery. Somehow they find a way to defeat it. I guess this movie establishes pretty early on that we know the way to kill a zombie is by destroying the head. And that's the most I can say for this movie is it knows exactly what it is. It knows you know the zombie lore. It pretends the cast of characters knows the zombie lore.
Yes.
And it doesn't bring anything really new to the table.
I want to touch on that because I have an enormous amount of respect for this movie for that reason. There's a trope across zombie movies that I despise, which is the Shaun of the Dead makes reference to it, right? Don't say the Z word. You know, nobody ever says zombies. It's always walkers and runners and you know, clickers and all this stuff. And you know, apparently nobody in this universe has ever heard of what a zombie is before. In Anna and the Apocalypse, they say zombie, right? They recognize that these are zombies and this is a zombie apocalypse. And it's like, thank you! Thank you for having the balls to just admit you're making a zombie movie. Nobody does this with vampires, right? Like, you don't watch Twilight, and Edward is like, I'm a vampire. And Bella's like, what's that? What's a vampire? Different
Are
thing,
you
man.
a vampire, though?
You know what I'm talking about? You don't watch a werewolf movie and they have to spend 2 hours explaining to you what a werewolf is because you've never heard of it before.
And I mean, it works for early zombie movies like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. But those movies, George A. Romero invented what we know as the modern zombie. So it makes sense that those characters don't know what a zombie is or necessarily how to kill one. Because before Night of the Living Dead, we had Carnival of Souls. Those were zombies.
Which, have you watched any of Joel Haver's skits on YouTube?
I haven't.
Okay, he does this really interesting animation style where it's like overlaid on reality. But he has a live action skit where it's a zombie apocalypse. And they're trying to figure out what to call them because nobody knows what to call the zombies. He's like, man, I hate these damn joggers, you know, and the other guy's like, yeah, I call them walkers, man, because they walk, you know. I just wish we had some kind of popular fiction that could help to explain what's going on here. I love that skit so much, and they're really funny. You should watch them sometime.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. They do decapitate this guy with the seesaw, and to the story's credit, it doesn't kill him. It doesn't kill the zombie because the brain hasn't been destroyed, I guess. And I like that idea that you can decapitate a zombie, but the head is still alive. Now, my favorite genre of zombie is until you destroy the brain, the whole thing is still animated. So if you cut off an arm, the arm is still going to be alive.
Which doesn't make much sense unless you include magic.
Come on now, it's zombies. It is what it is. So from this little decapitation scene, we cut to the leftover adults at the school, which includes Chris's grandmother, Tony, Mr. Savage, and Lisa, and a couple other just strange adults taking refuge.
By the way, Chris's grandmother is not named Tony. Those were two different characters.
Oh yes, no, Tony, Chris's grandmother. She's Italian. No, Tony is Anna's dad, who's the janitor, and him and Mr. Savage kind of have this interesting power dynamic where they talk about what they should do to help the survivors and lock the doors, and Mr. Savage basically pulls rank by talking about him being a janitor and undermining his capability as a human from that. Pretty much is what that sums up to.
Which I'm pretty sure once the zombie apocalypse happens, every single rank that is not related to the military is immediately thrown out the window, right? Like, I don't care if you're a janitor or a headmaster of a school. It's a zombie apocalypse.
This plays on a trope of a lot of zombie movies where you have these small groups playing as a microcosm to greater human ills. And that's pretty much what this segment of the story is. You have this power struggle between a lesser sort of class and an upper class, and a power dynamic therein toward people who just need help, period. So now it just kind of becomes a pissing contest between two people instead of helping the group as a whole. Is that kind of it?
I mean, this is your floor, man. What?
You can get into a lot of conversations with zombie movies about sociology and psychology of groups and human experience. All I'm here to say is this movie really doesn't do anything different to any other zombie movies, and if you've watched The Walking Dead, you've seen this sort of thing play out ad nauseum.
Which I gotta ask you a question about this. So, you know my preferences fairly well, I think. I tend to enjoy when media goes into these sort of like psychological issues and these deep human issues of, what are our vices, what is our shared experience and what that. This doesn't really translate to me for zombie movies. I find that when I watch a lot of zombie movies, it's almost never about the zombies, is it? It's always about like how society reacts to the zombies and how they form these different groups, and you've got like oppression and government conspiracies and warring like Badland Clan style stuff sometimes. And to me that's just boring, right? It's like, yeah, that could be very interesting. If you want to do that, just have a virus that kills everybody, right? Like, do The Stand. Don't make it a zombie movie. I came to a zombie movie to watch zombies, not your, like, weird-ass libertarian take on society.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Pretty much exactly the way you do. If I go into a zombie movie, I want to see a zombie movie. I don't want to see your little skit about morality in society and how terrible it is and how we all have follies and how it's all going to bring us to our knees and kill us, even if we work together when it's too late. Again, I give George A. Romero a pass because, again, he kind of invented this genre and people definitely ran with it a bit more and embellished a lot of the themes that were present therein. This movie, thankfully, we don't get too much of it before it decides it wants to be a musical again.
It's just like, I was so happy when they looked out the window and like the entire military had been infected, and I was just like, okay, thank God we're not doing the military thing. We always have to do the military thing where they come in and set up quarantine zones, and then they start doing weird experiments on people with vaccines, and oh shit, we're about to get topical, let's move on.
Yeah. So, like you said, they see the military outsides become zombies, and this is actually at the bowling alley. Anna and John run to the bowling alley because they have keys to it. And just by happenstance, the story doesn't really explain it, but Steph and Chris are also there because they're hiding out. Again, it makes literally no sense. And we have a little scene where they have to take on some zombies of bowling alley people and the lady they hit in the head with a shoe. So I think it's kind of funny that they killed her. They killed her. She was just dead on the toilet and died because they hit her in the head with a shoe.
You know, I didn't really make that connection, and I'm not 100% sure that the movie intended for you to make that connection, but that's pretty funny if that's the case. Like,
How else would she become a zombie?
got bit by one. I mean, that's another thing that's confusing, right? Zombies eat people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why are there so many zombies, right? Shouldn't they go and eat you, and you're dead, like you're gone. You can't be a zombie anymore. You've been eaten.
And well, it's also reanimating corpses.
Yeah, okay. If it is reanimating corpses, which in this movie it is, they actually say that on the radio. But there's a lot of these zombie movies where it's like, yeah, it's a disease, right? It's a virus. You know, you get bit, it's transmitted to you, and you go insane. It's like, yeah, but that's only if you survive and they don't eat your body. That they're supposed to eat your body. And we see that happening, right, in this movie. We see this guy, he just gets completely devoured at some point. And it's like, is that guy going to be a zombie? He doesn't have any internal organs.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
That was a tangent. But yeah, that always confuses me. It's like, finish the job, man.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And shows like The Walking Dead, where seemingly years pass, eventually these bodies are going to rot and just be skeletons.
Or they're gonna eat
And
each
what
other.
happens when, because you have to destroy the brain, what happens when the brain is fully decayed?
And do zombies die of old age? Like, you know, you mentioned them rotting or decaying. It's like, that's a valid question. But also, if they're still alive, like, do they eventually just die anyway?
They should.
Yeah.
The Walking Dead hasn't utilized skeletons yet. You just hear an ominous rattling in the distance
Ominous rattling.
of bones.
Sounds like a Harry Potter character. Professor Ominous Rattling. He has arthritis.
And he's a Slytherin. So, after they destroy all the zombies in this bowling alley, which Steph apparently has a proclivity for, she's very good at it. We have another song about human voice where they're just on social media using the Wi-Fi, seeing everything going on. I think they have some sort of a hashtag going on where everyone's just sharing photos of them with zombies. And this is about the most nuanced of a zombie perspective that this movie has to offer, is what happens in the beginning of a global zombie pandemic and we still have faculties. This would definitely be it.
This was probably the joke that got me the closest to laughing in this film.
But it was just a...
Hashtag evac selfie is what it
Yes.
was. Yeah, and you see these people like doing duck face next to a zombie who's trying to get through a chain link fence. Like,
Invite them, yeah.
And they don't even try to be subtle about it either. The main characters are like, wow, humanity deserves to die.
This movie kind of frustrates me because Anna, as much as I'm not saying anything bad about the actress, but her character isn't the most interesting of her group. For me, it's Steph. Steph is an immigrant from another country. Her parents are in Mexico. And her girlfriend is just somewhere out in the open. She has a lot more going on than Anna and her friends do. She is a strange person in a strange land. Her parents are in another strange land that she doesn't even really know about. And God knows where her girlfriend is. And none of that is really resolved. It's just vaguely mentioned.
Yeah, which she definitely is the character that has the most going on. Like, I don't think there's any argument there. I would hesitate to call her the most interesting because, to be honest, none of that stuff really ever comes into play, right? We don't ever see her girlfriend. We don't see her parents, like, because they're way off somewhere else. So
Yeah, but she has the most cinematic drama going on for her. If you were going to look at these characters and say, okay, who should we focus this movie around? should probably be on her because she has a lot more that a story could play off of. Her not knowing this place, her not knowing the people, versus someone who is established in this town and in this country and probably has a personal geographical perspective on where everything is. She just knows all the rocks.
I agree with you
Zombies hate quartz.
if we had more time to develop these characters, but I think developing Steph as a main character would take longer than this movie has.
Oh no, I'm saying replace.
Replace the main character with Steph.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If Steph were the main character, I don't think this movie has enough time to properly develop her. Because we can't...
Yes, because we're trying to do 6 other things.
Yeah, we can't see her girlfriend. We can't see her parents. So we would have to get that all through emotional conversations or flashbacks, and that would probably have to be a much more serious movie than the one that we're watching. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying?
Totally.
I think that Anna is boring as a main character. I agree with you, but at least her story is happening here, so we can see it, and I think that's why they have to go with it.
The one smart thing I will give these characters is when they go to sleep, they sleep in the ball pit. Which seems like a really good place to go to sleep.
Like in a zombie apocalypse, or just...
During a zombie apocalypse, yes. Unless a zombie just stumbles and falls over into the ball pit, they're not going to see you. So they're not going to get in the ball pit.
Which, there's another conversation that we should probably have about the logic of zombies in this movie, because they seem to be very sight-oriented. Like, if they don't see you, then they don't know you're there. And I don't feel like I've seen that before. Like, normally zombies are kind of predatory in the sense that they smell you. They hear you.
Or hear you.
Yeah, or they hear you. They can detect your presence as a food source. They're not just looking for you visually. And this one, it seemed to be almost entirely visually based.
I know The Walking Dead, their big thing is sound. They follow sound, and you know whenever someone shoots a gun, it's going to be a big deal, and it's just going to draw more zombies in.
Yep.
Out of seemingly nowhere.
And The Last of Us is the same way, right? With like the clickers, because the fungus kind of takes over your body and you eventually go blind, but you kind of use echolocation. And yeah, I don't think I've seen it done strictly with sight before. And I'm not a fan of it. It seems a bit cheesy. Like there's a scene a little bit later where they empty the ball pit and use like the little inflatable pool type thing as a boat, and they walk under it like they're sieging something, and it just works, right? And I'm like, that's kind of fucking stupid.
Oh yeah, because we have the scene later where they're in a vehicle, and the zombies don't hoard the vehicle because they don't see people. So then that begs the question: how much do you have to alter yourself before you're not seen as a person?
Yeah, can you do the Bill Murray thing from Zombieland?
Well, we had the snowman guy. We had the snowman guy who was turned into a zombie. Mm-hmm. If he wasn't already dead in the beginning. So clearly if it's a human-shaped thing, they'll attack it, which it begs the question, why don't they attack each other?
Exactly. Because you're right, if that guy was in a snowman costume, he didn't look like a human.
Mm-hmm. But he was still attacked.
Yeah, unless he got bit by a homeless man and then decided, nope, gotta make it to my job as the mascot. I will say that one thing in this movie that was consistently good were the zombie kills. Did you notice that?
They were very good. You had some brain cracking. That seemed to be where their budget went to outside of music development.
It felt like they had like an entire team dedicated to making sure every single individual zombie kill was awesome. Like, they were decapitating people with teeter-totters, they were stabbing people, like, up under the chin with a spoon or whatever the hell that was, beating them over the side of the head with a candy cane lawn ornament. Like, it was all great. Crushing a guy's head between 2 bowling balls. Probably
that takes muscle.
Oh, yeah. Probably the most creative part of the movie, by far, were the zombie kills. And I think they did a really good job.
If they had kept that momentum, maybe I would have more to say about it. But we leave that rather quickly when they decide they have to leave, and it's Chris's idea to to basically use, like you said, the blow up kiddie pool and hide under it. And we have the scene where zombies are attacking, and one sits on the kiddie pool and pees on Steph. And it's just stupid. It's just stupid.
It's really stupid, yes, and they even phrase it so awkwardly. They're like, "Hey, there's an old woman sitting on your face." It's I don't know. One of our mutual acquaintances, Dylan, he would probably be really into that. And if he ever listens to this, he's gonna fucking kill me for saying that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Please don't have me arrested.
Like and subscribe while you're here. But it's from here they run into... Oh, God. They run into the zombified army, and they run into Nick, who is pretty much enjoying exactly what he's doing. And he has a couple other droogs, I guess you'd call them, who are helping him kill people. Well, kill zombies. Yeah. And he has a song about it. About being a soldier at war.
Okay, maybe I'm crazy. Nick is like my favorite character in this movie. I love every minute that this guy is on screen.
So you're Team Nick and I'm Team Steph.
I am Team Nick, yes. Like, first of all, he's not really the traditional kind of dumb asshole jock. Like, he doesn't really do anything that's that bad. Like, I think he markers John's face or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, that's a dick move, but like at the end of the day, who cares? And he's actually getting shit done, right? That's like one of the most respectable things that any human being can do when survival is on the line is get shit done. He is going around killing zombies left and right. He's gathering supplies. Okay, you can call it looting if you want, but like it's an apocalypse, right? It's gathering supplies is what it is at this point. And he's good at it. And his song is really good. It's like, oh yeah, that dumb jock, asshole, soldier guy, toxic masculinity, XYZ, that's all great until you need somebody who kicks ass. And guess who's gonna kick ass? People like Nick. I love it.
And yes, it's a really good scene. And we get some more zombie kills. And it works. But the scene kind of begs the question. He just kind of comes in singing and the rest of the cast is just kind of looking around. So did he just have a song prepared for this in the universe?
Yeah, I think so, because the songs are canonical. I don't remember which person it is. I think it's Nick. He actually starts singing his theme song later in the movie, right? Like it's not a musical number. He just like kind of hums it to himself, and so that means that it canonically happened.
The story didn't just break away from what it was doing. Oh wow, I love it. The next little bit of this movie though is the part where it started to lose me. Because they're collecting supplies. They're in this strip mall area. We have Anna and John having this melodrama moment where John is trying to tell Anna about his feelings for her while she's also saying that even though there's this pandemic going on, I still plan to travel. Weird. Phrases that change with about 5 years of perspective.
Oh, yeah, not even 5 years, man. Like 17, 18, the pandemic happened in 20. Wow, that was some interesting timing. Like they got that in right before the mark, didn't they?
Yeah, so if you're listening to the show and you were put in the friend zone because a girl wanted to travel during a pandemic, you know, this is the show for you. This is the movie for you. You're going to really relate to some of these characters. There's something in this movie for everyone.
I'm kind of confused by the friend zone plotline. First of all, I think I complained in one of our previous episodes that I think the whole friend zone plotline's like that entire trope is stupid. Like it's done almost as much as the love triangle trope, and I just hate it. But what was the point of it in this film?
Exactly. Like there's a lot bigger issues going on right now. We don't need to be having this conversation at this precise minute.
Like first of all, I don't want to be an asshole, but for most of the movie I kind of fluctuated between thinking that John really liked Anna and thinking that John was gay.
Oh yeah, I thought John was gay too.
Yeah, and then second, they have this kind of friend zone plot line where he kind of sort of confesses that he likes her, and she kind of says, no, hey, you're just my friend. And then he fucking dies. It's like, what was the point of that? It literally went nowhere.
I will say, once our main cast did start dying, I was sad.
Oh, yeah.
I think the musical aspect, since it was just, we get to see the juxtaposition, because they put so much life into performances and stuff, and then seeing them, quote-unquote, die, it just kind of makes you take stock of these characters a little bit more.
Look,
I don't know.
Especially
when there's many I Want songs, we know all their thoughts and opinions on things. I don't know.
I gotta go ahead and make this confession now, because we're coming to, like, the midpoint of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The first quarter of this movie, I was bored to tears and waiting for it to be over with. I was like, I've got to turn this off, go buy a watch, just so I can check it every couple minutes. Like, my God, what am I watching? And then, randomly, without my knowledge, like halfway through it, I was like, super invested. I was just like, my eyes were glued to the screen, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? And when John died, I cried. And there was another scene, like, toward the end of the film, where I cried again. Like, it is not easy to make me cry during a movie, right? This is weird. And if you ask me, hey, Jacob, do you think that Anna and the Apocalypse is a good movie? I cannot answer that question as yes. But I was really, really into it. Like it really got me. It sucked me in, and I can't explain it. Did you experience anything similar?
Yes, I did. Whenever John died, it was very moving for me. Again, I can't really explain why. Probably because whenever someone dies in a zombie movie, you kind of get a wrap-up for their character, to some degree. And this movie's whole thesis is that there's no such thing as a Hollywood ending. I think because the movie lulls you into, I wouldn't say a false high note, because that's also kind of a conclusion in itself. It just abruptly does things when people become zombies. That itself tells you there's no such thing as a Hollywood ending. There is no peak of this character where you're saying, oh, they've achieved everything, now they're gonna die. Or this person's character arcs come full circle, now they're gonna die because there's nothing else to do with them. It's just out of the blue, people get bitten.
Yeah.
And that's how it would work in the real world. People just get bitten. It's not you have a touching heart-to-heart with someone and, you know, you've resolved all your conflicts, they become a zombie, and now it's this moment of catharsis for the person that has to kill you to keep you from becoming a zombie.
And I think it's because it starts out as such a ridiculous thing. It's like High School Musical, like Night of the Living Dead kind of just bullshit, right? And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're like, wait a minute, these are kids with dreams, right? Like they want to do something with their lives. They have people that they care about, and this dude, he's fucking dead now. Like, oh my God, it's just when when John died, like I said, I cried. Like later on, Chris and Lisa, they end up dying together.
That was very touching. That was very touching.
That was really sad. Like, holy shit. I don't understand how this movie made me care so much about these characters that I don't care anything about.
And I really didn't. I know. And Chris, I kind of wanted to hate him because he was kind of the bumbling idiot. I thought he was going to do something a lot stupider to put people in jeopardy, but he never did.
Yeah.
He was just kind of a dimwit, but a realistic dimwit. But he could hold his own during the zombie apocalypse. He wasn't doing anything to put anyone in danger. And I think it's, I don't have anything against these people. I just don't have anything for them.
Even Nick, like, he had to kill his own father because his father got bitten. Like, this isn't like his backstory. This shit happened like last night.
Yeah, and he said, finally do something to make me proud.
Yeah, finally do something right for once.
And that's the appropriate sort of melodrama you want in something like this. Not I'm having a talk with my best friend about being my girlfriend during an apocalypse when she wants to travel during a pandemic.
And yeah, like, okay, since you brought that up again, this is my plea to people who insist on doing friend zone plotlines. Please pick one of these two resolutions, all right? Your message needs to either be, hey, if you're a guy and you like a girl, but she just wants to be friends, don't be creepy. Don't keep trying to like subtly manipulate her into liking you. Just be friends or move on. Okay, that's option 1 because that's a lesson people need to learn. Option 2, your message should be, "Hey, girls, if you have a guy that you're really good friends with and he seems to like you as something more, maybe consider that would be a more functioning relationship than this random guy you met on Tinder or this guy who sits next to you in your psychology class and has nice arm muscles." Like, pick one of these two, because these are lessons that need to be taught. And friend zone plot lines, they never do that. They're just like really weird, awkward, unresolved nonsense.
Well, you just unwrote about 6 seasons of The Big Bang Theory.
I don't mind that. No, but I'm serious. Because so stories get told often because they happen in real life, right? Like, and that's one of the tropes. Like love triangles, as much as I hate them, that's something that kind of happens in real life sometimes. So I don't mind that you want to tell stories about it. Friend zone is the same way. It happens. Tell stories about it, but please have something interesting to say. Like bring a good lesson or a good moral to the table. Sorry, I know that was a bit of a rant. Do you have anything you want to say about that?
I don't really have anything to say about friend zones or love triangles. I think you mostly summed it up.
Okay.
What about a friend zone love triangle like Team Edward and Team Jacob?
That's just like writhing in sin.
Okay, so okay, so how about this? To fix the issue with friend zoning, what if every time a friend zone plotline is brought in, what if that main character who was the love interest has a baby, and then the person who is friend zone falls in love with the baby?
I think that would be a very progressive take, right?
Okay, well, Breaking Dawn did that.
I know. Like, what? Do you not just go around looking at your friends' babies and being like, I'll tap that?
Oh my god.
Am I weird?
We are earning the E. We are earning the E in the podcast. The explicit.
Yeah, and he has a role in the raising of the baby, right? So that makes it okay.
He has a role in the raising of the baby. Yeah, that makes it okay. It's okay because he's grooming the child.
Because now it's almost kind of like incest as well.
It's okay. She's a gross little robot monster.
Also, isn't it bestiality?
Yes.
Okay, or at least halfway bestiality.
The whole subplot with imprinting and Renesmee, really just Renesmee as a whole, from the name to the character to how it's presented, is just a problem in the story of Twilight. Probably the most egregious.
And that's
in a very egregious ocean of that story. Saying, it's okay, he didn't get with Bella, but that's okay. The part of Bella that he did love was actually the unfertilized egg, and now the baby that is born.
That was totally a fever dream, right? Like, Stephanie Meyer had some kind of weird fever dream, and she just...
I think she sold the rights to Twilight for $1 million or something, and she just did a line of coke and said, fuck it!
Okay. She called up George R. R.
Wolves
Martin.
in love with a baby.
She called up George R. R. Martin and was like, hey, how would you resolve this plotline? And he's like, incest baby.
I don't know. Incest grooming baby with a werewolf.
Which, that brings up a good question in terms of like, what exactly is bestiality, right? Or like, why is bestiality immoral? You know, is it because it's an animal, or is it because it's a non-consenting party? Like, when you get, like...
Let's not.
No, you don't want to do that?
Let's not.
Because I was gonna talk about science fiction, right? Like, when you have sapient lizard people or whatever, right? Like, you always have that weird, like, non-human, hypersexualized female character that, like people wanna be with, and it's like, but that's a lizard, you know? How does that work?
I want to know I want to see the early Star Trek, where we're just now discovering the first contact. I want to see the progressive groups and the conservative groups argue over having relations with these humanoid lizard people type things.
I'm being serious. Like I'm not just trying to troll you by talking about the ethics of bestiality on your podcast. Like this is a legitimate question. It's like if you have a consenting like sapient bear that wants to have sex with you, is that ethical? Like,
I'm gonna say no, because I get this feeling like we're making the Lord nervous.
but is he their
Having
lord too? The bear is not an Israelite.
Yeah, it's a Quran bear.
So okay, is that a problem? Like because they're different religions? It's like
I
my
think so. I think it's a religious difference type thing. If you're not raised in the Bear Baptist Church, it's not. It's kind of frowned on in a lot of alien bear communities, to marry outside the church.
as a God-fearing Christian, I cannot have sex with this sapient bear from Jupiter because he is Muslim. There's no way any human being has ever said that sentence before, right? That's a new sentence.
That's a new sentence.
Yes.
I don't know yet if it's going to end up on the cutting room floor.
Oh no, that's going in. This is the best episode of Deep Cups of Horror. Deep Cups of Horror, yes. It's
Deep
not just a
Cups of
speech
Horror.
impediment. We are drunk off our asses.
It does raise a good question in the context of the story, especially since we do have a lot of YA around this time that was playing with zombie love stories. And is the zombie a
Party?
consenting figure? Yes.
Like Warm Bodies. Did you ever see that movie?
Yes. And there's a book too.
I haven't read the book.
Oh,
Have you?
I wouldn't imagine you'd get anything else out of it that wasn't on screen. But basically, yeah. So there's a lot of issues with consent and cryptologist.
Well, that would be the necrophilia, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yes, I'm pretty sure we've talked about every taboo sex on here.
Yeah, like what we got old women
got-
sitting on people's faces. We've got bestiality. We've got necrophilia.
Incest,
Creepy friend zone people.
cryptophilia.
Cryptophilia. Oh yeah. Cryptophilia. Is that like werewolves and Jersey devils?
Yeah,
and
I'd
stuff?
say that's where that would come into, cryptophilia.
That is where it would come into.
Okay, let's get back to the story. The characters decide they're going to do something stupid and go through the Christmas tree emporium, which is where they're attacked and John is bitten. Probably, in my opinion, the stupidest part of this movie for me, because I was saying, don't do that.
It's definitely like a direct allegory to the haunted house scene in most zombie movies, right? Like where you're at a circus and you go into like the House of Mirrors or the haunted house or whatever. Except that it's a Christmas movie, so they made it a Christmas tree emporium.
Yeah. But again, John being bitten, that was sad. And then he sacrifices himself, which was smart. I thought Anna was going to have to kill him, or Nick was going to kill him. That was going to cause some sort of strife. But it was really cool that he wouldn't sacrifice himself, I guess. It still just kind of left me a bit emotional. But when they finally reach the school, Savage is there, and we know immediately Savage is gone feral.
He's gone savage.
He's gone savage, and I wouldn't trust him for a second. And the whole reason they're at the school is because Savage took Steph's car keys in the beginning because he said if it's on school property, it is school property. I didn't understand this.
I didn't either. So, if the school had a policy that if you park your car on campus, you have to give them your car keys until the end of the day, first of all, I don't like that, but that would have made sense to me. But it kind of seems like he was picking on her in particular.
Are we to assume that none of the other kids... Well, I guess we're to assume none of the other kids have a car. Maybe it's because she's American. That she and her parents are away, she does have a car.
I mean, maybe. So
That
Anna
might be-
and
well,
John
okay,
clearly don't have
so-
cars, but
That kind of explains why she is American.
because she has a car?
Yeah, I think that's how it was, because if we're trying to get to somebody with a car who knows how to drive. Public transportation is a lot more popular in the UK. So what I'm saying is she probably already knew how to drive in America, and she just got her license in the UK, and since her parents are in Mexico, she has the car. So that's probably kind of where things were going with it. I think. I still don't like that because there's not a whole bunch of keys in Savage's office, it's just hers.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing she's the only one who can drive, but honestly, you're not taking my car keys.
Oh, hell no, you're not taking my car keys.
That car's in my name.
But you can totally imagine a school having some shitty policy like that, right? Like, you have to give them your cell phone. You have to give them your cell phone, you have to give them your car keys, and you don't get them back until the end of the day.
Dude, I straight up told a teacher once senior year, they tried to take my phone. I'm like, oh, you mean this phone? This phone that I make payments on? No. It's like, you'll do it? No. Why? Because it's my property and I pay bills on it. No.
Good for you. I don't understand how people get away with that, right? Like, if I've got like a piece of jewelry in my backpack, you can't just confiscate that. So why can you take my phone? Like, it's personal property.
Yeah, and come to think of it, they're car keys. They probably had her house keys on it too.
If you wanna ban them from the school premises, that's one thing.
No, come to think of it, okay. Here's an issue with the story. Bit of a plot hole. Her and Chris go to the homeless shelter. Are we to assume that Chris took his camera and walked from the homeless shelter to the bowling alley?
That would be
and
my
if we
assumption.
do that, and if we do that, she probably wasn't going to come back till after the assembly ended. So how was she going to get her keys if her house key was on the key ring that her car keys were on?
Well, maybe they weren't on the same key ring. You don't have to.
Why would you have two key rings?
Because this asshole takes your car keys every day.
I can't just go to pig farts. It's on Mars. I need a rocket ship. That's what they need in this movie, a rocket ship. But anyway, Savage leads them to the cafeteria where everyone was stored, but it's just full of zombies at this point. And Savage has basically trapped them in there. Because apparently this school has a bunch of cages that come down.
Yeah, it's like security measures is what I would assume.
Okay. This old as dirt school has these cages that come down. Whatever. They start trying to get out of this mess. But at the same time, this is where I had to really put in my suspension of disbelief. Not for the musical numbers or anything else, but in this moment in particular, I was just shaking my fist with rage.
Why?
You know this guy is unhinged, and you all go in to this room that he locks you into. And if it weren't for just straight up happenstance, they wouldn't have got out at all through the little cage that they were able to open up.
And so I gotta ask your opinion on this. What is this weird ass turn the other cheek Batman style morality where you've got a guy who literally tried to kill 5 children, did kill an old woman, functionally he killed the old woman, and tried to kill your father. And then, you know, when you get the chance to kill him, you're like, no, it's not worth it. Fuck that! Kill the motherfucker!
Yeah, and at this point, he is an obstacle.
It's not even about, like, some sense of justice or vengeance. Like, this man is a danger. He needs to be removed.
Yes, he poses a threat. If he can't remove himself, he needs to be removed.
It is not a hypothetical threat. He poses an active threat. He's right there. He just tried to kill you. He had you tied up in a room full of zombies. Kill this motherfucker. This is not a question.
Yes. So that leads to Steph and Chris going to look for, what's her name? Lisa.
Lisa, yes.
Steph and Chris going to look for Lisa, and Anna going to look for her father and Savage. Steph and Chris find Lisa and Chris's grandmother.
Yes.
She's already dead, unfortunately, because of the heart condition. Super sad.
Again, yes, very sad.
Yes. So, and the three of them kind of get over it, shake it off, and they're gonna go, they're gonna go to Mr. Savage's office to collect Steph's key so that they can functionally leave.
Which no. Before you get too far, I've got one thing. I got one thing that I gotta say.
Sure.
When Savage first sends them to the cafeteria with all the zombies, he makes this statement of like, you know, you're in luck. You know, your parents almost left. something like that, right? And then they go in and they see a room full of zombies. I thought all their parents were dead and were zombies.
I thought everyone was zombies, yes, and I thought he was just gonna feed them to their family, which would have been very fucked
Yeah,
up.
that was super fucked up, and it really got me. I was like, oh my god, that's dark. But no, it just turns out they're random zombies that got led into the school. So that was kind of a letdown / a relief, depending on your perspective. But yeah, no, that got me for a minute, and I didn't want to breeze past that because that was crazy scary. For like the first second.
That's what I thought too, and I felt a bit let down when it didn't resolve to what we thought it was. But that was to give us, I guess, kind of the rest of the story, as it were. And we learn that it's more cemented that these zombies are purely eyesight. So if you just crouch down low on the floor, don't touch any of them, they're not going to suspect you're there. Mm-hmm. So, Chris and Lisa are tasked with creating a distraction so Steph can get to the other end of the room full of zombies to get her keys out of Savage's office. And this goes off pretty well. They have a very smart plan, Chris does, of just playing footage of, I guess, just some B-roll that he took from the camera, and that distracts them enough since they're visual. They like TV, I guess.
Yeah, but why were they standing behind the TV? Did they have to hook the phone up to an HDMI or something? And
I think so, yeah, they had to hook it up to an HDMI.
Because they were using the TV as a distraction, but they were standing right behind it. So all the zombies were looking at them anyway.
Oh, still probably distracted. They were just stupid.
And Steph, when she comes out of the office, she even calls them out on it. She's like, "What are you doing? Go!"
And while they're trying to go, they get a notification saying the battery's low, and this breaks whatever little trance the zombies are in, and chaos kind of ensues. Steph, again, is kind of kicking ass. Chris and Lisa try, but they simultaneously get bit, and the realization that both of them have gotten bit is actually a very touching little moment, where she realizes he gets bit, he realizes that she's gotten bit, and all three of them just kind of resign themselves to what's going to happen next, where Chris and Lisa are going to have to stay with the other zombies since they're not going to get attacked anymore, since they're about to be zombies, and Steph now has to go on without them.
I think what makes this so sad is that it's simultaneously a relief. Like, if one of them had been bitten, that would be heartbreaking, because the other one would have to go on without them. But because they both got bitten, you can tell they're almost happy about it. Like, no, we don't have to lose each other. We can just stay together. And that's simultaneously so sad, but also really...
Because are these two kind of the stupid comic relief characters? Yes, they are. But they don't do anything to unhinge any plan that the main characters have with their stupidity. They're not your regular, just bosom buddy idiot characters who are always just fucking up the plan, Scooby and Shaggy style.
Yeah, there really weren't any of those characters. And that was another thing that I wanted to commend the movie for, is I don't think any of the characters are very interesting, but they just kind of feel like real decent people, right? Like, you don't have the idiot comic relief character. You don't have the dumb asshole jock character, or like the slutty cheerleader character. These are all these are decent, normal people. And that was enjoyable to me.
I'll give it that. You don't have these characters playing into tropes. In fact, like this movie, you can argue that they are all 6 types of characters molded into one. Not that they're really given that much explanation or room to breathe to explore that, but you do get kind of the feeling that while they do possess some overbearing traits, they do feel like actual people, almost.
Except for Mr. Savage.
Except for Mr. Savage. Mr. Savage is very on the nose, the villain. The capital V villain.
His performance was nowhere near as wonderful as Telly Savalas in Horror Express, but it gave off that same vibe of this guy is in a different movie. He just wandered on stage, Jeff Goldblum style, started trying to kill some kids.
Started trying to kill some kids, yes.
Classic Goldblum.
Classic Goldblum. So, Anna's going through the school, and she has this candy cane with a spike in it. That's like spiked at the end so you can put it in the ground. Yeah. And it's an awesome visual. And she's able to find Savage in the auditorium. And we see that her father, Tony, is tied on the stage to a chair with Christmas lights to be bait for zombies. And we won't even go into the logistics of how is a grown man like this being tied up by Christmas lights.
I'll go into those logistics if you want. Like, that doesn't make any damn sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And how did Tony sit still long enough for Savage to effectively tie him up with those?
Tony could obviously take Mr. Savage. Like, no question about it. Savage is a little worm.
Yes, he's a little worm. And Anna kind of has this song about putting on a show, which was kind of forgettable. It's whatever. But we get kind of a grand hurrah of her being a badass, killing zombies, as it were, and making her way onto the stage. I think at one point she does a backflip or something. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm just imposing some things because she was giving me strong Buffy vibes.
You might have imagined that. I don't remember that, but it definitely could have happened. Like, it was very stylized, final boss kind of thing.
Yes, final boss giving me very much Buffy the Vampire Slayer because it was so cheap and cheesy, but okay, suspend your disbelief. So she gets on the stage, and Savage almost throws Tony to the zombies, but they get into a fight, a scuffle. It's a whole thing, back and forth. Is Tony gonna get eaten by the zombies? Is Savage gonna get eaten by the zombies? And this is where we have that power play we were talking about of this weird moral ideal that maybe Savage shouldn't be killed. But he literally should.
Yeah, we're in a school, right? So this metaphor can work. He's the equivalent of an active shooter. He literally just tried to kill you like 5 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. He had your father tied up in a chair 10 seconds ago. What do you just no, leave him. No, don't leave him. Like, at least restrain him. If you don't want to kill him, what are these people doing, man?
I don't know. But they eventually just throw Savage to the zombies. And he gets consumed.
Well, with Chekhov's Christmas star, by the way. We should probably talk about that.
Oh yeah, at the beginning there was a whole moment where, and it wouldn't have passed if you had any sort of proper stage manager, there was a star for the Christmas pageant that was on a pulley system, but with this kind of pageant, I don't know why you would need a star on a pulley system at all. But something went wrong with it in the beginning, and it came down and it swung, almost hitting Savage. But this time, Anna, knowing that could happen, got him in the right place and activated whatever rope it was to fall, causing the star to fall and hitting Savage and throwing him into the group of zombies.
It was really satisfying to me, by the way. Like, I had kind of forgotten about the star. I thought it was like a throwaway joke because, again, a lot of this movie is just kind of stupid.
This movie throws a lot at you, and you just kind of roll with its different segments.
But then when he finally got hit by that thing, it was just like genuine catharsis.
But that victory is short-lived when we see that Tony has been bitten and Anna kind of has this moment of defeat that kind of reminds you, okay, this whole thing was stupid. This whole voyage was stupid to go get your dad. What was so important about her getting her dad? I guess you could argue her wanting to go get her dad was her trying to hold on to home, even though she wanted to leave. But now I thought, well, now you have nothing holding you back.
Yeah, you can go to Australia now.
I mean, I don't know what else there was to say about that. It just kind of, again, Anna's sort of a bland character.
I mean, Anna's a bland character, but I thought the scene between her and her dad was really touching, and actually, probably 2 or 3 minutes from now, this was the other scene that made me cry. Was at the very end, we have this kind of montage of all the different characters and where they are, and you can see the dad is turning into a zombie, and he like drops his phone that has this picture of a selfie of Anna on it. And so like the idea that like his last moments before turning into a mindless corpse was just kind of like loving and thinking about his daughter, that got me again. And I don't know why, because we kind of see this sort of thing fairly frequently, but something about the way this movie does it, it's just really, really emotional.
Yes, and seeing John and seeing Lisa and Chris in their prospective places. Now, you can argue, what the hell is John doing? Because he was consumed by the zombies, he should just be nothing. But apparently he's just laying there and just has 1 or 2 bites on him. Whatever, zombies are wasteful creatures.
Well, they
but
were
somehow, but somehow in the scuffle at the tree park, Nick is still alive. I didn't understand how he got back there, but...
Well, yeah, we don't see it, I don't think.
Yeah, no. Nick, they got separated at the indoor tree lot, and Nick has somehow made it to the school to help Anna. Yeah, help Anna do what she needs to do to get out. And when they finally get out of school and have battled all the zombies, we have Steph there with the car. And Steph's there with the car, they get in, and we get this little reprise of Hollywood ending, which kind of just reminds you that there's no such thing as Hollywood ending. And the movie basically leaves with Anna leaving Little Haven to look for a safer place. And that's just kind of where it is. And that's the end of the movie. I want to say it's brave of this movie to end with just this cast of characters left, because usually there is more catharsis in planning who's left. Other movies would have probably just had Anna and John be the last 2 standing, but you have these 3 people who really aren't related in any form or fashion to each other in the story, or in the story would make sense for them to live other than just the randomness of real life survival.
Well, I mean, Anna and Nick are clearly...
Well, yes, they kind of have that, they had a past sexual experience, but he definitely wasn't the one you wanted Anna to be with at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
and I don't even think it's the person that she, out of the people who we've seen die, wanted her to be with at the end of the movie.
You're definitely right. It feels like a random assortment of characters, which I love because it just kind of has that poignant feeling of like, well, we're in this now.
It's just the randomness of survival, and again, there's no such thing as a Hollywood ending. And so this is just kind of where the story... This is just kind of where we end, because this is how it would kind of happen in real life.
Can you help me out with the ending, though? Because I kind of feel like I missed something. One of the characters kind of says something like, well, where to now? And then, like, one of them just kind of laughs cynically. And then we see a sign that on the side of the road that says, like, sorry to lose you, right? Or, like, sorry you've left or whatnot. And there's, like, a red banner flapping in the sky that I couldn't read. And then the movie
was Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And then the movie just ends. Was there any kind of joke there or any kind of, like, poignant statement? Or was it just, like, yeah, what do we do now?
Yeah, that was literally it.
Okay, good. So we are on the same page. I didn't want to make sure I missed something, because like I said, I couldn't read the banner.
No, it was just a Merry Christmas banner, and then we get the end stinger with the zombie Santa. I don't know, the story as a whole. It's really not a whole, it's fragments. It's basically segmented little skits with the same characters going from place to place.
I am finding myself suddenly at a loss for words. Now that we've gotten to the ending, I don't know what I want to say about this.
I know. The good parts, to me, are really good, even though there's just a couple of them. Parts that don't work, the thing is, the parts that don't work, it's not that they don't work, they could just use a bit more fine-tuning, and they could work. But I still find myself, and I watched it about 2 weeks ago, and then I skimmed through it a couple nights ago just to refresh myself for the pod. I found myself still thinking about this ending, and how we had this random assortment of characters. None of them were very, except for one of them, they weren't very badass. There was no reason for their survival other than just the randomness of circumstances that they were in. I
touched on this a little bit earlier, but it is so confusing to me. I don't like basically anything about this movie. And yet, I love this movie. Like, I'm so glad that I watched it, and I'm still thinking about it. And the fact that it provoked such an emotional reaction from me, like, I feel like I've been pranked. The characters are not interesting at all. The story is basically non-existent. It's like 6 different genres. They all fail. I don't like the musical numbers. It's not funny. It's not scary. I think you could argue maybe the coming of age stuff does kind of work. But somehow it all comes together and makes something that I really enjoyed.
I guess you have these characters who are singing about their hopes and dreams. And because we don't know much else about them outside of their songs, you kind of have the Michael Myers effect where you just have this blank expression that you can impose anything onto. Kind of like we discussed in Carnival of Souls a little bit. You have these blank characters that you just have a vague idea of, and you can impose whatever you want to into their experience from just the little we have of them.
Well,
The power of suggestion.
that wasn't really my experience, though. With Mary and Carnival of Souls, the entire setup was so weird and abstract and unexplained that you were forced to try to speculate on what was happening. With this, it's all kind of straightforward, right? It's like a couple days of a zombie apocalypse, people die, and then they're going to drive from Scotland to Australia, apparently. Like, I never felt the need to speculate on Anna's psychology or on Steph's psychology or anything like that. They were what they are.
And I think this movie did what it needed to do for the sake of plot. Having high schoolers who probably don't know what's going on in the world, and it makes sense for them not to know what's going on in the world because they're high schoolers. They're in their own world. They're not going to have a buddy who works for some government agency or works in the military or is a newscaster, whatever, who has some sort of insight. You just have these people who are, for the first time, having the real world, which is a zombie apocalypse, infiltrate their lives and how they react to it.
I think I've realized something. I like this movie for a lot of the things that it didn't do. I'm not a huge fan of the things it did do, but the things that it didn't do. So, firstly, it didn't have, like, superhuman zombies, right? Like these World War Z tidal waves of fast-moving super predators. It's, like, really stupid. It didn't have, like, the military and the government corruption and, like, everybody coming in and doing all this stuff. It didn't have that. It didn't have, like, these stupid archetypical characters that fall into tropes and you know exactly what they are the moment you see them. It was very refreshing, I think, to see a story that felt so secluded and with real human beings dealing with their problems.
Yeah, I think that's where I was too. Because again, a character like Chris with any other zombie movie, I would think, oh boy, that's a problem. That's a dumbass you need to kill right now. You need to kill that dumbass right now because he's going to do something stupid.
He's going to step on a whoopee cushion while you're sneaking away from zombies.
Yes, or he's going to do something to save his girlfriend that's going to put the rest of the group in jeopardy and end up getting a bunch of people killed. But that doesn't happen. In fact, the opposite happens. He puts himself and his girlfriend in jeopardy for the betterment of the group. And it's not a sacrificial kind of thing. It's just him being a decent human kind of thing.
Yep. And even though we talked about how, like, none of the characters are particularly interesting or deep or overly likable, apart from Mr. Savage, I didn't find any of them dislikable either. Did you?
Even Mr. Savage, he was deliciously unlikable.
I don't want the word delicious anywhere near that man.
You knew exactly why he was there. He was, for a movie that we're praising for not having the stereotypes of characters, he was the one stereotype of a character. And it was just this cartoonishly bad guy who's gone crazy over power, over having a minute amount of authority in this chaos.
It's crazy to me how people with, like, the lowest level managerial positions fathomable get such a power trip. Middle school teachers mall cops. They're so happy.
Dude, I see it all the time at work because I'm in a position where we sometimes host conferences or house people who are attending conferences because we have a huge conference center in town. And the school teachers, I'm not saying it for all of them, but a lot of the ones that are seasoned and on in positions where they have to go to special meetings and boards every couple years, they have, you can tell this person's a power trip and they're used to having 20 mush minds that listen to their every word and do exactly as they say. Because then they try to also implement that on full-grown adults and then look at you like, why aren't you doing what I say?
And I think that boils down to one fairly important question, and I'd like to get your opinion on this.
Okay.
Would you lick chocolate off of Thoros of Myr?
No.
Okay, I think I agree with you. I think that's probably the right take.
For a lot of reasons, mostly political.
It's a religious issue as well.
It's a religious issue as well, yes.
I'm not a fan of human sacrifice. I think it had its place, but we've moved beyond that.
So I think we've ran the gambit that this movie would let us do. In doing so, we've covered a lot of different podcast areas. If you have any true crime you'd like to bring into this just for a second so we can add that
True
in there.
crime? Yeah, so we need to talk about the Anna's dad being tied up, right? Like, what is this deal with movies not knowing how to tie people up? Like, clearly no movie has ever been directed by somebody who was into BDSM, right? Like, that guy is sitting there in a chair with Christmas lights gently wrapped around his body. When Anna walks up to free him, she just, like, lifts them off of him.
Yes.
Is there... I have actually had somebody claim to me that this is some kind of industry regulation, that you're not allowed to show people tied up correctly because they don't want people to know how to do that. Now, that sounded like bullshit to me, but maybe it's not. You know a lot more about movies than I do.
It's not only an industry regulation, perhaps because of that, but it's also a safety thing.
A safety thing.
You got to think movie sets are also workplaces, and that they are liable to OSHA guidelines as well within them. So if something's going to happen where someone's tied correctly, that would require a stunt performer to do. In case someone who's specially trained, because if there is a fire or something like that, that person needs to be able to get up off set and leave.
Okay.
Feasibly.
Well, what about like in superhero movies and stuff where people are like hanging upside down, like stuck in webs and stuff?
Well, a lot of that's green screen, and they don't do it for an excessive amount of time.
Okay.
And they're not bound.
I mean, you may not be bound like in the sense that somebody's kidnapped you, but like if you're literally hanging upside down on some kind of suspensor, you are functionally, you are bound. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from.
Are those
just tied by their feet?
Are those stunt performers? I mean, sometimes the actors really do that.
Sometimes they do. There's a lot of regulation that goes into it.
Okay.
And there's a lot of different shots that do it. You'll have several shots where they are suspended upside down. And there's different regulations that go into setting up those shots for those days they're doing it. But then there's also tricks around it. A lot of times they'll film those scenes as if they're supposed to be outside. So what they can do is have the actor upright or laying down. They'll just put a fan on them so their hair is going up. Yeah. But it's as though the wind is just whistling through it.
I think that actually makes a lot of sense, right? It's a safety thing. Like, they don't want to actually tie up the actors in case something goes wrong.
Because then you have to have not only the actor be tied to a chair if a fire erupts because you're doing all these high-intensity lights. And God knows what kind of stunts you're doing on the movie to boot that's going on next door. You'd also have to have someone who can untie this person and this individual. And you could say, cut the rope, but then you're going to cost a lot of money to cut the rope and have to purchase new rope.
Yeah, that's some good quality rope, man. Building burns down. We don't want to lose our rope.
That was $5 worth of rope. Which this movie only made $670,000. So it wasn't. They needed their money. They needed their rope money.
Now, that is one of my biggest fears, is that the building that I am working in will burn down and I will lose my rope.
You would if, say, your job was the manager of the Sistine Chapel. No joke, one of my favorite things to do is look at one-star reviews for famous places. There was a review for the Sistine Chapel. The person said it was overcrowded. She said it was overcrowded, and she brought up that it was a fire hazard, and the security guard just didn't seem to care. And I'm pretty sure what we're all thinking, lady, you're in the Sistine Chapel. If there's a fire, your safety is secondary to the preservation of that ceiling.
I think I would enjoy those reviews more if they were actually reviewing the site itself and not like the bureaucracy and the management of it. Like can you imagine somebody just being like, nah man, the Sistine Chapel is overrated.
The dicks aren't even that big.
I know, right? The biggest dick I saw was when I had to use a restroom.
Okay, so we're at the part of this episode where we decide if we think it was deep or if it needs to be cut. Deep meaning this movie was good and we enjoyed it and we think you should watch it too. Or if it should be cut, meaning this movie should be changed in some way or you shouldn't even watch it at all. I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Jacob. What do you think about this movie?
I don't...
Is it deep or does it need to be cut?
I don't understand this, man. I've said it twice now. I don't like anything about this movie. No kidding, one of my favorite parts of this movie is right before Anna is about to kill all the zombies with the candy cane, and she puts her hair into a ponytail. Because, oh my god, if you have ever tried to do any kind of sport or fighting with hair in your face, doesn't work. That attention to detail was one of my favorite parts of this movie. That's how much I didn't like most of this movie, and yet I love it. I don't understand. Like, this is possibly my favorite movie we reviewed so far. And
oh my god, you said that about Frailty.
I know. And
so now we're comparing Frailty to Anna and the Apocalypse.
Yes. I mean, what am I going to be thinking about 20 years from now? Am I going to be thinking about Matthew McConaughey's creepy, like, real Texan accent? Or am I going to be thinking about this coming-of-age comedy zombie horror musical?
It's definitely an experience that you won't unsee.
Yeah, it's like Rubber. Unironically, I think Rubber is a good movie. But you don't recommend it to anybody because it's like a good movie, right? You just want them to have experienced the same thing that you did. I guess it's kind of like that. It's like, I didn't enjoy this, but I'm really glad I had the experience. And for a movie to make me cry twice... like, it can't be a bad movie at that point, right?
I mean, it can. It just hits you in a sweet spot at the right time. Sometimes they just find you like that.
It's like, I cried when John died. I cried when the dad died. There was a commercial break and I stubbed my toe and I cried then.
I know, watching some of these movies, because the only place to find them is on the weird, well, legally, the weird third-party streamers where you have to watch a commercial every 15 minutes.
Yeah, I watched it on Pluto TV.
Yeah, I think I watched it on Tubi. But it was... Okay, so with your final verdict...
Oh, yeah. Yes. Deep. I'm so mad that I have to say that. But yeah, this movie's deep. Like, I legitimately think you should watch it and figure out what you think about it. Like, right... even if you don't think it's a good movie, the fact that I'm sitting here malding about my opinion, that means it's deep.
And the reason I even have you on this show is because I know you're usually a bit of a stiffler.
Okay, so if
the horror genre.
If I start liking too many movies, am I going to get kicked off?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, you have a very entirely valid worldview with the genre that I really enjoy exploring, especially given your little taste preference you're forming, where you're gonna tell me that this movie was better than Wishmaster.
This movie was better than Wishmaster.
Okay.
Wishmaster had a lot more going for it, but it wasted its potential. This had nothing going for it, and it used every bit of it.
Okay, I'll give you that. It took its premise and it ran.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least tried to. This is going to be one where we're going to disagree.
You're cutting
Just
it?
a little bit. I'm cutting it. I'm going to say it needs to be cut. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch it and enjoy it for what it is, but I want it to be cut into 6 equal sections. And then I also want you to take those 6 equal sections and make whole movies out of those.
They used the word zombie. You've got to give them cred for that, right?
Again, I think it should be watched, but maybe just split it up into the genres. That way it could be more popular, because you're alienating a lot of people making a zombie musical. Because a lot of the people that, I'm not saying they're not out there, I'm one of those people, who like zombies, they don't like musicals. And those that like musicals don't necessarily like zombies. I'm one of those people, I like both, and they're out there, but you have a lot of hardcore horror fans who probably aren't going to enjoy a high school zombie musical.
I mean, it straight up doesn't have an audience, right? Like, there's literally no person alive who can possibly be a fan of this genre. This genre doesn't exist.
Oh no, no. There are 3 Disney Channel original movies called Zombie. And they are a musical. So it is in, I guess, the zombie musical genre, which now we might have a whole podcast about that, where we just talk about the zombie musical genre. Oh, and then there's also Cannibal the Musical. Not really zombies, but they're still eating people.
So there's no doubt in my mind that this is someone's favorite movie. Right? Like,
I mean, it has to be. I don't really think it has a cult following, but it's good. But with that said, we've kind of done this little... It's kind of interesting. We started with a zombie movie, and we ended this little thing with a zombie movie. Again, didn't mean to do it. But those zombies versus this zombies, you can kind of tell where the genre has changed. And going forward, you can kind of see where you have these individual films that were doing their own perspective things. And slowly we just started to mesh a bunch of shit together and say, here you go.
well, I think it would, to be honest, it's probably disingenuous to call this a horror movie. Anna and the Apocalypse.
I mean, it's a horror movie. It has zombies. It has kills. It still falls in the camp of horror. The horror umbrella is very wide.
Yeah, but like horror is a word that has meaning, right? It's about terror. It's about scaring you. It's about creating like deep existential dread in you. Just because you have a zombie in a movie doesn't make it a horror movie, right? Like,
Yeah, but this movie does invoke a certain sense of dread for me, just in the fact that these characters are left not knowing where they're going, but knowing they're leaving, and hoping wherever they go is a better place. But now, with the randomness of this, God knows what's going to happen to them next.
but is that horror though? Like, if you were watching a romance movie and a guy like gets dumped and has to like completely reorganize his life, that's horrendously dreadful, right? Like you're left alone to try to figure yourself out and figure your world out, and like, that's not a horror movie.
Well, it's a horror... This is, I guess... I hate calling it a horror comedy, because a comedy doesn't really work. It's just a mesh of things.
Yeah,
But horror is one of them.
Okay.
Because you have gore effects. Like, extended gore effects. They're zombies. You do have these moments where they are playing on tension. At least trying to.
Well, here's my litmus test for you. If you had a friend or a significant other who came up to you and said, I really want to watch a horror movie with you tonight. Do you have any recommendations? Would you whip out Anna and the Apocalypse?
You know I would. I am the one who will whip out This is why I made this podcast. I will whip out terrible films. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, Sleepaway Camp, Wishmaster, Carnival of Souls.
Okay. But it's not about how good the film is. It's like, is that the genre? Like, your friend wants to watch a horror movie, and you're like, okay, yes. Here's your horror movie.
Well, it depends, because I kind of try to gauge what they're going to be into. Again, this is all encompassing. Are they going to respond more to a possession type experience? Are they going to respond more to a slasher or psychological horror or a classic film? Are they just wanting something stupid on Netflix that's just going to make a bunch of jump scare sounds?
I don't know. It kind of feels like, your friend, he's a fan of Ice Road Truckers. And so you're like, dude, have you ever seen Polar Express?
Ice Road Trucker. No, I'd probably recommend Deep Snow, another zombie movie about zombie Nazis.
Why do people mix Nazis with everything? I feel like every fifth movie is about Nazis.
Well, 'cause they're bad. And the extended universe for Lord of the Rings hasn't really came out, so we can't just have the Nazgul everything. Nazgul zombies, Nazgul vampires, Nazgul werewolves. I feel like we'll get Uruk-hai, Creatures of the Deep, before we get that.
Nazi Nazgul Pirate Revenge 2.
Alright, I believe we've run this into the ground far enough. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you. And if you're new to the show, or if you haven't done so already, go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel and video. That way you can be notified every time a new one comes out. If you would, also leave us a review. That really helps, as long as a 5-star review. If you would like, you can also give us a follow on our social medias, which is at Deep Horror Pod across all platforms. And you can also email us at deepcutsofhorror@gmail.com. Next time you hear from us, guys, we're going to be taking a look at the movie Tamara with my friend Martha again. So stay tuned for that, and until next time, guys, stay spooky.